Carnelian is a new modal caster released alongside the Polluting Light story event. Modal casters, as the title suggests, switch between two modes, a passive charging state and an offensive attacking state. While recharging, Carnelian doesn't attack, and instead gains defense and resistance. Furthermore, modals can overcharge skills by waiting a little longer before casting for additional benefit. Is she worth pulling? Well, there are a few things to consider before I can answer that question. Her core niche is that of a caster tank. Sounds more interesting than it is. In my experience, a good deployment order renders this niche irrelevant, and she doesn't tank when attacking. You know, when enemies would be in range to attack her. If she were a ground unit, she would be far more useful in this regard because she would block enemies and hold them, and then you could go for a big burst. The overcharge mechanic is also a little misleading. It gives the impression of great skills, made even greater with a little patience. In reality, the skills require overcharge to be worthwhile 9 times out of 10. Those seemingly short cooldowns are longer than they appear. Right, onto her skills. Carnelian's first skill isn't worth discussing. The damage is too low and the defense increase rarely comes in useful. The best case scenario is to counter drones, but those tougher drones are likely to drift past while she slowly attacks, if she attacks at all. I'll come back to her second skill in a moment. Let's discuss the third, her main attraction. The issue with Mark of Gluttony is the backwards design. The overcharge applies marks to enemies with each hit that increases damage taken by 20%, stacking up to 5 times for a 100% damage increase. With an attack speed of 2 seconds, that means 10 seconds for maximum effect. Later enemies enter at 0 stacks and need time to collect stacks for full effect. Worse still, the skill's base damage starts low and ramps up to full effect over time, so enemies most likely to have full stacks won't be around for the high base damage. On the other hand, low stack enemies will face the high base damage. The two opposing mechanics are clunky and frankly don't make sense. The marks should have stacked on herself, with the overcharge mechanic giving her skill the full base damage from the start. Her skill sounds insane on paper, though is impractical in the field with a ton of wasted damage. That said, Gluttony will still kill a wave of enemies. It does considerable damage over its duration. The true AoE hitting all enemies in range can have its uses. The real problem I have with Carnelian is her lack of presence. Even if you have the perfect spot for her on the map, the beautiful U-turn, she still does nothing for over half of the time. Take a look at this example, a perfect setup for Carnelian. She decimates that wave. Meanwhile, Aya, at the same level but lower mastery, also decimates the wave and deals with enemies in between. If you're relying on Carnelian for damage, the enemy spawn pattern needs to match her recharge, and overcharge, remember, or she's just taking up a squad and deployment slot. Think of a scenario where enemies are crashing against your defenders, building into an overwhelming force. They're going to leak, so you activate your skill and wipe them out. Then more enemies arrive, and now you have to wait for Carnelian to wake up to do something before enemies overwhelm your defenses again. When using her, I often find myself needing her to do something, anything between skill activations. Adjusting the timing doesn't help either, as it opens up dead zones elsewhere. Come on, Carnelian, do something, anything! Of course, Arknights is a team game, and other operators can cover while she recharges. But that's not the issue. The question is whether she is worth your resources to do her job, or is it better to invest in someone else? With the likes of Aya or Dusk, sure, their big skills take longer to recharge, yet they aren't standing idle between uses. Those waves of enemies won't overwhelm you every time their skills are on cooldown. To talk of some positives to Carnelian, her second skill, Sand Fetters, is a great source of immobilize when overcharged, particularly if you can give her an attack speed buff. It's not as potent as Suzerain's Foxfire Haze, though its shortest recharge and good uptime make it a worthwhile skill and one to consider for mastery if you do pull her. Another positive is Carnelian's forgiving nature for deployment order mistakes. You can drop her in last, normally a bad idea for casters, and she'll be fine, perhaps even great. She's rather new player friendly in that regard. The video in the background will show her tanking a boss quite easily after having been deployed last. So, should you pull her? She's an interesting character to use, but I can't in good conscience recommend pulling her if you're after powerful units. She's a mid-tier unit, well below Iaftiala, though above the likes of Mustima. I'm one to put my Orundum where my mouth is, and I won't be pulling for her. However, if you have a well-rounded roster already and want someone different, her niche as a tank caster will bring something new to the field. In a scenario where I pull her off banner, I would build her for this reason, albeit with a low priority. The final point to consider at the time of her release is the upcoming schedule of banners. If you're after the limited operator Chen from the Summer Anniversary event, or the solo rerun of Thorns following, you need to be conservative with your pulls right now. If you need a powerful caster for your team as well, Aya is likely to appear on a banner with her first skin soon to be released. Of course, as always, if you simply like the character and don't particularly care for unit strength, then go right ahead and enjoy. If you are pulling her during Proluding Lights, know that the event seems designed to show her off with its stage layouts, so you can always borrow her for a test before you make your decision. See you in the next video and good luck with your pulls.